This video discusses drug use and dangers scientifically for educational and harm reduction purposes only. It does not endorse drug use. Consult professionals for concerns. Be aware of local laws. For as long as humans have done drugs, we have made up stupid myths about those drugs. From Snoop Dogg insisting on microwaving his blunts for 11 seconds to lock in the flavor, to Nazi Germany thinking that methamphetamine was such a wonder drug that they mass-produced it and sold it over the counter as Pervitin. We laugh at them. Ha! How could they believe such a thing? But what about you? No one is immune, no matter who you are, no matter how nerdy you are. You definitely believe in some drug myths, so that's what this video is here to do. Let's talk about some drug myths you probably believe in. Oh, and warning, literally hundreds of you were upset with me in the last video. This video, you're gonna get way more upset. Oh! The entire idea of indica versus sativa and cannabis strains. We're starting out strong with this one. That's mostly bullshit, all of it. Let's all get on the same page first. So what we're all taught at first is that there's this drug called cannabis or weed, and the active thing that makes you high is what? THC. Then you get a little bit farther into weed, and then you find out there's these two different branches of cannabis called indica and sativa. And when you walk into a weed store and ask them what's the difference, what do they say? Well, indica is more of a relaxation effect. It's more of like a couch lock, more of a body high, while sativa is what? It's a head high. It's more energetic or better for creativity. And if you ask someone who actually grows weed, they'll often tell you that they actually look different. Indica and sativa have different morphologies because they've kind of evolved in different directions. Indica being more of a short, bushy, kind of big boned gal, while sativa is more tall, lengthy, very thin leaves. And this separation of indica versus sativa actually dates back like a few hundred years back to Lamarck, where he actually identified them as different species or subspecies. But you might ask, what causes these different highs between the indica and sativa? And the answer that everyone tells you is what? Well, THC is gonna get you most of the high, but there's all these other compounds like CBD or CBN, CBG, different terpenes that can affect the high with the THC. And each indica and sativa have their own unique ratio of these. Indica having usually more CBD, sativa having lower CBD. And in plant drug talk, there's actually a word for this unique ratio or composition of these chemicals called a chemotype. A plant's chemotype is just describing its unique amount of these compounds in it. And finally, we have the last layer, which is strains. There's thousands of strains. There's Afghan OG, there's Blue Dream, Blue Haze, Alaska Thunder. Each strain advertised is different and often advertised as having their own unique effects. Some of them better for creativity or pain relief or better for anxiety. And this is actually so ingrained in the cannabis industry that there are actual medical patients that stick to doing one strain because they really do believe that these strains are best for their condition. Okay, I think we're on the same page now, and on the surface, all of this sounds really reasonable because this is also very similar to how a lot of other plant drugs work. Magic mushrooms come to mind. There's different strains of magic mushrooms native to different parts of the world that have different chemotypes and actually can feel very different.
Actually, mushrooms aren't a plant, they're a fungus. Look at that.
And the plant drug kava, which I went to Vanuatu to study in this video, we found a very similar story. There are different strains of kava. People have their favorite strain that they like, and those strains were developed over hundreds of years of different towns or villages self-isolating and making their own strain. So what's wrong with the cannabis story? Everything. Oh my God, everything. So to start out, indica versus sativa. Those can mean so many different things depending on who you're talking to and when they're being used. For example, nowadays, it's pretty common to look at indica sativa as mostly like a CBD content type of thing, like, oh, an indica probably has high CBD. Oh, it has low CBD, must be a sativa, right? But if you ask some biologist or taxonomist, they'll tell you that it has nothing to do with CBD content, but it's like an actual lineage type of thing. Like, they are two different species of cannabis that have evolved differently. But then some other people use it just to describe morphology. Like, if they look at a short, bushy, stocky plant, they'll go, oh, that must be an indica. And then they look at a tall, skinny plant, oh, it must be a sativa, which that's completely different than the other definitions. And then to make it really complicated, if you actually go back in history, the term indica and sativa were used completely differently by different people for different reasons. At one point, taxonomists used to use indica to describe drug type cannabis, while sativa was used for like hemp stuff that couldn't get you high. One of the founding fathers of ethnobotany, Richard Evans Schultz, he used indica to describe short, bushy plants that looked a certain way that were from Afghanistan. But his description of indica was completely contradictory to Lamarck's description of indica, which he used it to describe like taller, less bushy plants that were from India or Southeast and South Africa. This paper, which is like a primary source for my entire argument, genomics-based taxonomy to clarify cannabis classification. To show how insanely confusing it gets, they actually made a diagram right here. These are all the different ways people for the last like 200-300 years have tried to classify cannabis. And if it has like the blue outline on it, that means they used molecular ways to classify them. If it had an orange background around it, that means they use like chemotyping, chemovar, like using the like how much THC, CBD they have it to classify it. And then the black ones, that's all just like they use morphology. So they didn't even include any molecular or any chemical profile stuff. Like, do you like, it's total bullshit. Do you see how confusing this gets? How like Indica and Sativa has just already right now completely eroded away to like nothing. So what the is the truth? And this is where I have to say, grain of salt, I have to kind of inject my personal opinion on this because there's really no agreement. Like I've read papers from PhDs that say something that is totally contradictory to another paper from a PhD. So grain of salt for what I'm about to say, but Indica and Sativa, functionally speaking, are complete bullshit and we need to completely stop using them at all. First reason it's bullshit, you cannot look at a plant's morphology, the way it grows and looks, and say that is what its like lineage is. You can't look at a short bushy plant and go, it's indica, so that means it must evolve from that. Nope. Cannabis is so genetically diverse at this point, and it's gotten so jumbled up that there is absolutely no way to figure out just by looking at it what its lineage is. Another reason it's bullshit is you cannot look at a plant's morphology and predict what type of chemotype it is. You can't look at a short bushy plant that you think is indica and predict it must have high CBD. This study tested that exact thing, and I quote, "The results of this study showed that based on visual appearance and some morphological measurements, it is not possible to determine a plant's chemotype." I think some of you are starting to see how this Indica and Sativa, when you learn more about the history and the science behind it, really dissolves away. But some of you who are still like insistent that you can tell like Indica and Sativa is a difference, I'm gonna be a dick, but this is exactly what you guys are claiming. Let me get this right. So you're saying a plant, cannabis, that modern scientists with chromatography equipment and ways to genotype and figure out the lineage of plants can't even agree. You are claiming you can take the flower of that plant, smoke it, get high, and just from you smoking it and getting high, can tell the lineage of this plant. That a scientist can't even. Oh, it must be originally from the Himalayas. Bitch, really? No, it's placebo. I know that actually might be kind of difficult for a lot of people to digest because you might have perpetuated this myth. I have before. You might be so hell-bent your entire life thinking, I only like indica, I only like indica. And now I'm telling you, indica and sativa are the same thing. Stop playing that game. It might be hard to digest that, but just have solace that corporations are shitty. We can all agree on that, and they've lied to you, they've marketed it to you. It's not your fault. We all fell for it, but it is bullshit. And in my personal opinion, we need to throw away the terms indica and sativa altogether because through so many of the things that I've read, historically and in current science, those terms literally hold us back from actually doing good research on the history of cannabis, a really cool plant. Guys, cannabis history is so cool. I don't even like weed that much, but I have something to show you. This is a book from the 1700s. This is an explorer that went to Egypt. Ayo, my people. Why did I put a black power symbol? Arabs indeed do not drink, or very rarely, and the common people pound the leaves of green hemp, make a ball of it, and swallow it down to make them cheerful. And a composition is made of the buds of hemp before they flower, which has the same intoxicating quality as laudanum, and it is called afyum, or opium, which signifies anything that stupefies or intoxicates. A vice that the Turks are remarkable for is not practiced among the Arabs or true Egyptians. Isn't that cool? He's kind of, I have a theory that he's actually like, afyum we don't use to just intoxicate, it's actually used specifically for opium. And the way he's describing how they do it, like that's actually how a lot of people do opium today in Egypt. Like they'll just eat the balls of opium. They don't smoke it like the Chinese. I said that kind of judgy. They don't smoke it like the Chinese. Okay, bitch. I don't have the energy to address strains. They're also bullshit. They're less bullshit than Indica Sativa, but still bullshit. If you're interested in this subject, I would do an entire video. I was going to do this. It's just, God, it's a really complicated subject. Yeah, strains are BS. Kind of not. It's complicated. Okay. Next. Molly and ecstasy are two different drugs. Wrong. Same drug, kind of confusing history. So both Molly and ecstasy are both MDMA, or 3,4 methylene dioxymethamphetamine. Oh, I nailed that. 3,4 methylene dioxymethamphetamine. Nailed that. One of the most common beliefs for why they are different drugs is if you ask someone what's the difference, they will say, well, Molly is pure MDMA, while ecstasy is cut with a whole bunch of other stuff. And one of the reasons people believe that is because colloquially you use them in different ways. When someone says I'm doing ecstasy, they usually are talking about doing pressed pills, Tesla pills, or Pac-Man pills. There's a million colors and designs, whatever. But when someone says I'm doing Molly, Molly often comes in like a clear capsule and you can literally see the powder or crystals. And so often people have been led to believe that you can see the drug, so therefore that's the pure stuff, but that is a myth. The first important note about this myth, you can cut anything. It doesn't matter if it's in a pill or in a crystal or a powder. If you can see it, you can cut anything. This study actually studied Molly and ecstasy samples from raves and then found that only 60% of the samples actually contained MDMA, which is oof. But on top of that, they found that there was really no difference between Molly or ecstasy in the purity level. Like, they are both pretty much the same amount of up shit adulterants in there. And where this distinction of ecstasy, the pill form, that's different than Molly actually stems from is because Molly, or MDMA, is a bit of a new drug, right? It really only became popular in the 90s and 2000s. And as it became more popular, what happened was those pills that most people were doing back in those days started to get cut with tons of shit. Bath salts, cathinones became popular in the 2000s. There was caffeine, there was meth, tons of stuff. And so people back then started to associate these pressed pills, which was the popular way of doing MDMA back then, as adulterated cut stuff. And so Molly came in, doing the pure stuff came in, and people thought, oh, this is the real stuff. But in all actuality, as we see, they are the exact same drug and both tend to be cut at the same rate. And from personal experience, I remember when I was like early 20s, talked to a street pharmacist, was like, oh, this is the clean stuff. He gave me the whole line about Molly. You can see this stuff, right? It's a clean stuff. Bro, we tested that. That shit was methy as hell. So methy. Side note, MDMA is like one of the best smell. It smells like vanilla root beer. Like, it's strong vanilla root beer. It is so, I've heard it smells so good. Wait, if you're a perfumer, that'd be a cool ass merch idea. Like MDMA scented perfume. Oh, that would smack. Oh, hit me up in the DMs. That's crazy. There's no way to avoid spam calls and emails. Not with that attitude, brother. If you didn't know, there's this whole shitty industry called data brokers where they make money on your data, and what your data is depends on a lot. They could just have your name, your age, your gender, which is already pretty bad. They can pretty easily get a lot more, like your spending habits, your favorite websites, how much time do you spend on certain websites. They can straight up get your social security number and your court records and your social media accounts. Like, they can get a ton of shit on you, brother. And that is worth a lot of money. And they will sell that to other people that will try to sell you things. That's why you get so many super targeted ads or certain emails that are just like eerily very relevant to you, or calls or texts. And the only way to really avoid those things is to actually reach out to these data brokers and demand them to give your shit back. But you and me both know you're not gonna actually do that. And also there's an insane amount of these companies. And so you can't really do it. And it also is always changing. There's more companies popping up. They're selling your data constantly. It's not a one-time thing. And so today's sponsor, Incogni, their entire job is to do that for you. They reach out to these companies on your behalf, they take down your information from these companies on your behalf, and they continue to do so. It's not a one-time thing. This is a constant problem that we all have to deal with. Anytime you go on a website or anything, there's a chance they're gonna take your data. Honestly, to me, it's a pretty good sell. Like, I'm gonna use it. I mean, they give it to me for free, but I mean, like, I would pay for it actually. So sign up using my code Bechet or go to the link in the description and sign up today. MDMA contains methamphetamine. It doesn't, but when people hear the full name of MDMA, methylene dioxymethamphetamine, they hear the last part and go, oh my God, it contains methamphetamine. It's not really how chemistry works. MDMA or ecstasy is a long name, the 3,4 methylene dioxy, all that. That describes the chemical structure of MDMA, which is very similar to methamphetamine. You can see it right here, they look very close. But the fact that they're not the same makes a very big difference. In chemistry, just because a molecule looks very similar or even is almost the same as another one but only has one different atom can make the biggest difference. This is ethanol, the alcohol we drink to have fun. This is methanol. You don't want to drink that, it's not fun. This is water. You want to drink that. If you add one oxygen atom, this is hydrogen peroxide. You don't want to drink that. And this is the same case with methamphetamine versus MDMA. They look very similar, but the fact that they're not the exact same can make a very big difference, and in fact does. But the fact that they do look kind of similar is because they are under the same classification of drugs called phenethylamines, which include methamphetamine, amphetamine, dextroamphetamine, which are like the stuff in Adderall, mescaline, which is the active compound in the peyote cactus, the drug, and dopamine, which is also a phenethylamine. So, yeah. The entire idea of kratom veins and strains. Bullshit. To catch everyone up, kratom is a leaf that is dried and consumed all over the world, but it's very popular in the West right now. Used for painkiller, anxiety, just for fun. It's also very addictive, okay? Just like in cannabis, kratom has different strains that the sellers will tell you have different effects, right? There's also different veins. There's red vein, white vein, green vein, I think there's like gold vein or something. And they're said that like each of those have their different effects within it. Red vein kratom I think is supposed to be really relaxing, while white vein is supposed to be more of like an energizing coffee effect. All bullshit, all of it. Here's a study. They got 644 current kratom users and anonymously surveyed them, and essentially, I skimmed through the study, but they found that even though the people in the study said that there was a difference in the strains and they all kind of described the strains, how they are marketed, they tested the actual strains and the product analysis revealed no significant cross-strain differences in alkaloid content. Essentially, it's all bullshit. It was just marketing. You know what, I actually need to call someone. Prove my point, okay? Let's hope he answers.
Your call has been forwarded to voicemail.
Damn it. He's calling back. Yo, what's up, man?
Hey, nothing much. How you doing?
I'm doing a section on my drug myths thing about the idea of kratom strains being bullshit. Okay?
Complete and utter.
Complete and utter, right? Complete and utter. Our veins are also bullshit, correct?
So there is some differentiation in vein color.
Soren's a nerd. So that was Soren Shade, who is the owner of Top Tree Herbs, which is a company that specializes in kratom, also Hamilton Morris's producer. And what he explained to me was, strains like OG Bali or whatever the other ones, those are complete bullshit for a number of reasons. But the vein color is kind of a miscommunication, because when someone says, oh, this is red vein, this is white vein, right? People think they're actually talking about the vein of the leaf, because there are different colors of the veins of the leaves. That's not what those colors actually usually mean. Usually when someone says, oh, it's a green vein, a red vein, whatever, that's actually the color of the powder that you see, which is usually determined by how long it's been fermented. But ostensibly, just the way the kratom industry works in the world right now, it just really doesn't mean that much. So just get whatever powder works for you. Okay, you were very, very helpful. Thank you, bro. Thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you for making this sick-ass content.
I'll talk to you later, bro. Fill me in on Hamilton. Okay, peace.
Yep, bye-bye.
Told ya, bitch. Told ya. You doubted me. Adderall is basically prescription meth. This is a really complicated one. And I've also been guilty of perpetuating this myth. If you haven't heard this before, it's often said by people, for a lot of reasons actually. Sometimes parents will say it because they don't want to give their kids this prescription Adderall. Like, oh, I've heard it's like basically meth, right? Sometimes like people like me will say, you're judging folk on the street for doing meth every day, but you're doing your meth every day, it's just prescribed, so you think you're better, right? It's kind of like a got you argument I use sometimes. But, okay. To start out so we're all on the same page, I think some people have heard people say this and think that Adderall is literally the same as meth. No. Methamphetamine is one compound. Adderall is dextroamphetamine and amphetamine, which are entirely different compounds, so they're not literally the same. So then why do some people say that Adderall is basically legal meth? And this is where the conversation gets a little complicated, because in a lot of ways, they are very similar. I discovered this when I was much younger, much stupider. I ran out of my own prescription, and so I bought some street Adderall pills, which never fucking do that. They looked like Adderall to me. I talked to the guy, they said, yeah, they're Adderall extended release. You know, I took it, I felt no difference. Cool, awesome, got the Adderall. Well, months passed and I actually bought a reagent test so I could test drugs for different drugs, right? And I tested that pill, not expecting much, and found out that it was actually meth, not Adderall. And it blew my mind because they felt the exact same thing to me. Like, it was the exact same thing. To show you even more how similar they can be, I went on Healthline to look up the differences between meth and Adderall, and they literally have a list of side effects for each of them, right? In one of them, it has side effects for illegal methamphetamines, okay? All these, right? And then right next to it, it has the list of side effects for Adderall/Disoxin. Bitch, Disoxin is meth. It's just the prescription name for meth. Yes, by the way, meth is actually a prescription drug that can be used. It's not very commonly used. But yeah, so they were literally categorizing the side effects of Adderall/meth versus meth. And they're still basically the same side effects. This also really shows why a lot of people, including myself, do say, yeah, Adderall is basically prescription meth, because it shows the problem, and this is a bit of a rant, and I'm really sorry, with our medical system and how people see medicine, because I've been prescribed Adderall for many years now, and it has really changed my life and helped me. I don't think I would be as successful and be able to have this channel and have the jobs that I've had if I didn't have it. It really has changed my life in a positive way, but I also never forget the fact that it is a drug. Just because a doctor touched it and prescribed it to me doesn't magically make it just a medicine. It is still street speed. It is still a highly addictive drug that can ruin my life if I don't stay vigilant. And yeah, I think it's pretty hypocritical and stupid how people will judge others for doing street speed or meth, often to help with their undiagnosed problems, and judge them, oh my God, it's terrible for your body, they're ruining their life, all that kind of stuff, yet simultaneously do prescription speed every single day, and they think they get a pass because they had the money to get diagnosed and have the prescription. Woo! Okay, now let's actually address why meth is actually completely different than Adderall. One of the biggest differences between Adderall and meth is that meth lasts a lot longer than Adderall. Adderall, an oral dose, would be around 3 to 6 hours you'll feel the effects, depending on a lot of factors, right? Meth, if you take the same dose orally, lasts like 8 to 12 hours, like way longer. Another difference is the culture around the two drugs make a very big difference on how people interact with them. For example, there's a big price difference. I think, and I was just talking to my friend, and we don't know for sure, but I think depending on where you are, the street price of meth per gram is like around $20, but $20 would only get you like 50 milligrams of Adderall, which is not even, like that's a 20th of the amount, right? So totally different, and you're getting, like as we discussed, way less of a high because it's shorter. Basically, meth is much cheaper, so it's way easier to get super hooked on it. Another cultural difference is the route of administration. As we discussed with crack versus cocaine, the way people do meth is a big difference on why it feels so different. A lot of times people don't eat meth. They will snort meth, they will inject meth, they will smoke meth, which makes a massive difference on the high. It's way more euphoric those other methods. Another massive difference is how much dopamine you get from the drug. And according to this study, at a comparable dose, meth releases 5 times as much dopamine as Adderall does, meaning like it's way more, that's way more addictive. Oh my gosh. And here's the last key difference I will share with you, and I think this is what the DARE program should have been sharing, because this is some scary shit. Meth, short or long-term use, breaks down the blood-brain barrier. Translation, the barrier that protects your brain from shit going in there and killing you, it breaks that down. That's terrifying. I wonder if someone who has a broken down blood-brain barrier can do like just straight oxytocin. Or like just eat dopamine or serotonin. I wonder if that would work. That's an interesting. So now you know, there is a lot of similarities between Adderall and meth, but they are definitely not the same, and meth is a lot different than Adderall when you get into the weeds of it. Okay, let's do a speed round while I read some stupid comments, and not all of them are stupid, and we will address them real quick. Okay. 3.5 grams of cocaine does not produce 3.5 grams of crack, but way less, maybe 0.35 grams. That's why the law is the way it is. You're actually kind of backwards. Crack, when you make crack out of cocaine, often if you have 3.5 grams of cocaine and turn that into crack, you often get an actually more crack when you turn it into crack because they'll often cut that with more baking soda to get more product to sell. Nah, everyone should just not use drugs. In my 27 long years of being a degenerate, I am yet to ever meet a single person on this earth who has never done a drug. I've met a lot of people who think they've never done a drug and judge others for doing drugs, but never met someone who's actually never done one. Maybe some Mormons. Coffee is a drug, caffeine is a drug, and if you want to say, oh my God, bro, come on, it's not really a drug, it's coffee. No, you are just ignorant historically, and I'm sorry if it comes off like condescending, but you're being condescending. Coffee, when you read the history, when it was first introduced in Europe, it was very much treated like a drug, like a, oh my gosh, this is ruining culture. Like, it was almost the vibe of how in the 1960s weed and LSD was like ruining culture, and it's like, you know, everything's like, it's a revolution, right? That's kind of how coffee was seen. There was like these coffee houses and these guys were doing coffee and talking about politics, and philosophers were going there, and the governments were like, oh my gosh, we have to shut these down, these are illegal. And I've talked about this before, in Islam, historically, when coffee was introduced hundreds and hundreds of years ago, some of them would be like, coffee is kind of haram, like, you know, drugs are haram, like we shouldn't be doing this. So it was like actually a bit of a debate. But as culture went on, people got more adjusted to coffee, and so now we don't see it as a drug, we just see it as coffee, but that doesn't make it not a drug. When cultures get adjusted to a substance, there's a transition point of drug to not drug. A great example in modern times is in the 90s or in the 2000s when I was growing up, weed, if you smoked weed, you did drugs, right? Nowadays, if you smoke weed, you're smoking weed. You're not necessarily doing drugs. You know, if someone says, I'm gonna go do drugs, no one's thinking weed, right? It's because we've culturally like understood weed as weed. We see it as like a unique experience, not just drugs, right? I have a question. Freebasing coke is very expensive, but crack is cheaper. It doesn't make sense that it's the same thing. So this is a very good question. In my last video, I said that crack is free-based cocaine, and that's like true technically, but if you were like kind of a little bit street savvy, you know that's not technically true. As far as talking about crack and coke, there's really 3 types of cocaine that you should be familiar with. So there's cocaine hydrochloride, which is the snortable stuff, right? And then there's crack, which is free-based coke using baking soda. And then you'll also see another version called free-based coke. Famously, the comedian Richard Pryor almost died trying to make free-based coke. So what's the real difference? So this is a great question. Free-based coke is often really expensive compared to crack, even though they're both technically free-based cocaine, right? Crack is made very simply just using baking soda, but it's really, really simple, right? But the problem is that that product that you get is really impure. It's just a lot of baking soda in it. It's just not some good shit. So guys who wanted to smoke cocaine but didn't want the cut shit, they wanted some clean, like 100% cocaine stuff, what they would do is they get the cocaine hydrochloride, the powdered stuff, and then using ammonia and like, I think ethyl ether or something. It's a whole different process to make like technically free-based coke. And it's like, it's pretty dangerous. The stuff, the solvents that you use, like ether, are very flammable. And that's how Richard Pryor almost died. But the product is much better. But they're both free-based coke. Like crack and freebase are both the exact same drug. It's just generally, culturally speaking, one of them is a lot less good quality. Is it only me, or do you give off Tyler the Creator vibes? Didn't know Tyler the Creator has a brother. Ooh, guys, stop it. Was going to subscribe until you went political. Thanks for letting me know. Thumbs down. I make videos about drugs. What about that is not inherently political? What a weird comment. And I think what you're referring to is like me saying that crack is associated with institutional racism, which how are you disagreeing with in 2025? What the, wow, I'm glad that drugs are now at a point where both conservatives and liberals can watch the same content and kind of agree, which I like that, that's cool. You're a fucking weirdo, you know? Drugs are inherently racial. I hate to break it to you, that's just the way it is. Opium was very much racialized against the Chinese. Cannabis, why we call it marijuana, was kind of a ploy to make cannabis use like wrong. They're like, oh, the Mexicans do it, so marijuana, you know? And so that's very racial. You were completely wrong about morphine and fent. Morphine will give you euphoria, fent does not cause euphoria. I saw this comment a lot. I still stand by my statement. In my last video, I said that if I give you fentanyl or morphine in a hospital setting, most people would not be able to tell the difference. That's 100% true, right? But if you are an experienced opioid user, yes, you can definitely tell the difference. I just didn't know this was common knowledge. I just learned this from talking to people. They can kind of tell, like when they're like, ooh, this is some bad shit. Like this just doesn't feel good. It feels like not euphoric and just, I feel sleepy. So yeah, fentanyl's like kind of the worst high. So funny. What type of cancer did you have? I'm glad you got better. I was born with a germ cell tumor on my spine, on my butt. I had childhood butt cancer. And they discovered it when I was 2, and then I got the chemotherapy and all that, and I got better. Funny enough, the chemotherapy they gave me, I was actually supposed to be deaf, but I got super lucky. No hearing loss.